G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about race day nutrition. Whether you're doing a 10K, half, full, or an ultra marathon, when it comes to your race week or race day nutrition, this is going to be the difference between a personal best or a disaster. So today we're going to be covering carbohydrate loading, hydration, how to keep your gut happy during the week and on race day, all with some practical race day nutrition strategies. So first up, we're going to be talking about carbohydrate loading. Now for some people like me, this is going to be a great time because you might just love eating food. However, for other people with lower appetites, this actually becomes quite challenging when it comes to race week. For both parties though, we've got to talk about why it's important. We need to remember that carbohydrates are the primary fuel source when it comes to higher intensity exercise and as well as sustaining this for long periods of time. If we use a car as an analogy, if it's driving on the highway at a high speed, eventually that fuel is going to start to run out. So generally what happens is when we notice that happening or the tank is low, what do? You drive to the fuel station to put some more fuel in the car so you can keep going. Now the whole idea with carbohydrate loading is that you build up your carbohydrate stores so you don't have to deplete yourself on race day and use your sports gels or any sort of nutrition on the course just to top yourself back up. So when it comes to carbohydrate loading, you're basically just making sure that you've got a full tank when it comes to race day. So when it comes to how much, some of the prominent research out there says that 8 to 12 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. So for a 70 kilogram runner, this could look like 560 grams to 840 grams of carbohydrate. This will be quite challenging for someone who does not eat much food. They may only be getting in 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrate per day. So when it comes to working it out for yourself, you may want to aim for the lower end of the range to begin with, and then over time start to build up your ability to eat more food and load more carbohydrate when it comes to race week. The thing is, we don't just want to be aiming for clean foods. If you're a clean eater and you're already struggling to eat more, eating high fiber, nutrient dense foods that are a lot more filling is going to make it more challenging to get enough carbohydrate in your body during the carb loading period. The other thing with high fiber foods is that it's going to cause more bloating and gas, which is going to be uncomfortable. So you want to be aiming for low fiber, easy to digest carbohydrate sources to avoid these issues. Think white rice, pasta, bread, sports drinks, maybe some lollies here and there, some foods that are lower in fiber. Or if you've got a bit of a sweet tooth like me, something like a mango sorbet might be quite nice. Now, if your parents were like mine as a kid, you probably carb loaded the night before any sort of sporting event or race that you had. Having a massive meal the night before a race, especially when you're not used to it, is not going to be the way to go if you're trying to avoid gut upset. And in fact, to optimally start to soak your muscle stores with glycogen, this could range from 2 to 4 days in the lead up to the event for you to actually start your carb loading. What I recommend to clients is just to increase the carbohydrate sources that they already have in their meals. So if they're already having things like rice, pasta, any sort of bread, bagels, maybe cereal, just start to increase those sources a little bit. And then when it comes to additions, just adding things like honey to a bagel, having a little bit more cereal that is lower in fiber, or like I said before, maybe adding a little bit of dessert after dinner that's gonna be higher in carbohydrate, low in fats, and that isn't gonna mess with your tummy. Even adding some more sugary lollies or sports drinks come race week is gonna be beneficial in helping you to increase your glycogen stores. And if anything, you should be aiming for less fiber as race day approaches to speed up your digestion. So moving on now, let's talk about hydration. During exercise, you can lose 1 to 2 liters of water per hour depending on the conditions and the intensity of exercise. And once you get to the point that you lose up to 2% of body weight in water, this is going to inhibit your performance. So when it comes to daily hydration, recommendations can differ, but between 2 to 3 liters of water per day is going to cover the general population. However, you do need to remember that if you're working in a job or doing a lot of training that causes you to lose more sweat than the average Joe, then you're going to need to be compensating for this. A good rule of thumb when it comes to sweat loss after heavy sweat loss training sessions is consuming 150% of the weight loss. So if you were to weigh yourself before and after the session and you'd lost a kilo of weight or a liter of sweat, you'd be looking to consume about 1.5 liters of water in the hours following to make up for that. Now that's going to be in addition to the original 2 to 3 liters of water per day. Now when it comes to race day, drinking 500 mils of water 2 to 3 hours before the race is going to be ideal. As the race approaches, you obviously don't want to drink too much water. Otherwise, you're just going to need to go to the toilet. So 30 minutes prior to the race, having 150 to 300 mils of water, and this will just help you to top up that little bit more. Now, it is just going to depend on the race conditions. So if you're in a hot climate, it's very humid, and there's going to be higher sweat loss, you're running at a very high intensity, you're going to need to aim for 400 to 800 mils and be at the higher end of that range. Now we need to consider that different running conditions are going to influence how much sweat is lost for any given individual. So the general range is 400 to 800 milliliters of water per hour of exercise or per running on race day. But this could depend on what you're wearing, how humid it is, how hot it is, whether it's raining or not, whether there's a breeze. All these sort of conditions can affect how much sweat you're going to be losing and therefore how much water that you're going to have to be getting back in. All right, so let's talk about GI distress, gut upset, pooping yourself mid-race. We know what it's about. And to be honest with you, this is one of the biggest things that I worry about when it comes to an event. It's not so much the distance or the time that I'm going for, but just knowing that I'm going to be able to get through the whole run without having to visit the toilet. So what we want to do here 2 to 3 days before a race is start to reduce our fiber and fat intake. As we said before, fibrous foods are generally going to make you a little bit more bloated and gassy, and they'll slow down digestion. So just start to cull them out a little bit temporarily. Remember, this is just for race week. This isn't an everyday or all year round thing that you'll be doing. You'll also want to start to reduce your fat intake. So when it comes to protein sources, aiming for lean protein sources, definitely not eating a whole lot of oily or fried foods. And if you are someone that is fine with dairy, making sure that you're getting lower fat alternatives. When it comes to that point, any sort of foods that you know you've got allergies with or intolerances with, cut them out when it comes to race week. You don't want to be putting yourself through that sort of grief and have those nerves leading into the race that you're going to have some gut issues. So if you're wondering what you should have when it comes to your pre-race meal, all I did for my last race was just have a couple of crumpets with some honey on them. Typically, I don't like to eat a lot of food before I train. Now, some people do like to add some fats, and you could add something like a little bit of peanut butter. I just typically like to eat a lot lighter when it comes to my pre-training or pre-event meals. On another note, if you're someone that has caffeine normally and you always have this before your runs, then don't change a thing. However, if you're someone that doesn't usually do that, please don't use race day as your time to increase your caffeine intake or take some sort of pre-workout, because this could end in an actual disaster. And the same goes for nutrition in general. When it comes to race week and especially race day, don't make any dramatic changes. All of these things that we're talking about now, you should be trialing weeks and months leading into race day. Using your long runs is going to be the best opportunity for you to practice your race day nutrition. And you can even start to toy with carb loading at times, 2 to 3 days out from a long run to see what works for you. Think about how much time and effort that you've put into your training for any given event. You don't want to throw that away when it comes to this event just because you messed up something with nutrition that could have been easily avoided. So when it comes to what you're actually consuming during the race, generally people are just going to have gels, chews, or they might have some sort of sports drink. Now normally these products are going to be formulated with both glucose and fructose for better absorption. Again, you'll need to use your long runs and your training to practice what your body can tolerate, but aiming for about 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour is going to be ideal. So when it comes to events under 2 hours, anywhere from 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour can be enough. Some individuals can train themselves to handle more. However, usually it's in the longer events that some of these guys will start to consume up to 90 to even 120 grams of carbohydrate per hour. To give you an example, some of the gels out there will usually have either 30 grams or 60 grams in one packet. So in my past race, I had one just before the start, and then I had one every 30 minutes from that point there. And even though this run went for about 2 hours and 13 minutes, I still made sure that I had that last gel at that 2 hour mark, even though I only had 2 to 3K left, just so I could finish home strong without worrying about fatiguing on the way. Now, bouncing back to caffeine, the recommendations are 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. For someone like myself, the top range of that can nearly be 500 milligrams of caffeine, which is absolutely obscene to me to have in one go. Usually I'd only be having about 200 to 300 milligrams of caffeine before my races, and that's what works for me. And again, I would not recommend that you rapidly increase your caffeine intake when it comes to race day if you have not practiced it before. All right, so let's wrap that all up and make a bit of a checklist so you're gonna know what you're doing next time it comes to your race week nutrition for that big day. So when it comes to carb loading, anywhere from 2 to 4 days before the event, you wanna start to consume 8 to 12 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. Now, in general, you should be taking care of your hydration, but as a rule of thumb, aiming for about 2 to 3 liters of water per day and making up 150% of the weight loss during your training runs leading into this event. When it comes to race morning, having 500 mils of water 2 to 3 hours prior to the actual gun time, and no more than 300 mils of water 30 minutes leading into that starting point. As with your carbohydrate loading, when it comes to eliminating gut upset, you want to reduce how much fiber and fats that you're having when it comes to this carb loading period and when it leads into race day and the morning of race day, as high fiber and high fat foods are going to be more likely to cause more bloating, gassiness, and discomfort when it comes to that event. Both of them will also make it harder to get enough carbohydrate in during your carb loading period if you're already someone who has a low appetite. So when it comes to race morning, a couple hours before the event, topping up with some honey on some crumpets, some toast or some bagels. And maybe when it gets a little bit closer to that race, maybe 15 to 30 minutes prior, having a gel. And during the race, likely aiming for 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Remembering that gels are going to be a great option because most gels are either going to have 30 or 60 grams of carbohydrates per packet. And to finally drill home that most important part, practice your race day nutrition on the long runs in the weeks and months leading up to your actual race. Again, we don't want to ruin all that hard work and dedication to this event by simply making a few errors with nutrition that either cause you to fatigue too early, cramp up, or may force you to go to the toilet on the course or during your running. Remember, the best nutrition plan is going to be the one that you've tested in training, so don't leave it to chance. I hope this helps you hit a personal best in your next race. If you got any more questions or comments, leave them below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.